Hello and welcome to Socially Served. We're at the Abilities Expo. And as you know, Socially Served is here for you, the consumer, so you can make informed decisions. So I'm really pleased to be having as my guest Elio and Monique, his interpreter, from the Canadian Helen Keller Center. And we're going to talk a little bit about the organization itself and their services. Welcome, Elio, and thank you for taking your time to be interviewed today. Could you tell us a little bit about the Canadian Helen Keller Center?
Sure. Hello, Frank, and thank you for having me here. As you mentioned, my name is Elio. It's Elio Rigillio. And in ASL, my sign name would look like this. It's an E on the shoulder. And I have a protactile name as well, which is taking your index finger and making a circular motion on your shoulder. So you can use either when identifying me. I have an interpreter here with me. This is Monique. Monique Bozzer, Ledru. Sign name. She's a freelance interpreter with me today. And we're here working at the Canadian Helen Keller Center booth. The Canadian Helen Keller Center, otherwise known as CHKC. So that's the Canadian Helen Keller Center. Again, short form is CHKC. Right. Canadian Helen Keller Center works for deafblind individuals, providing services and training. We also have emergency services. There's an apartment available for individuals who are deafblind. We have a variety of services, intervener services and training, and interpreters available to them. So it's fully accessible. My specific role at the Canadian Helen Keller Center is, short form is CRC. That's the Consumer Relations Coordinator. So CRC for short. That's my job. As a deafblind individual, I have Usher syndrome. My vision has decreased over time. And my role ultimately is to work with consumers and supporting them, advocating, providing education, teaching other individuals, hoping to open the awareness for the population in general. So I go off and do a number of presentations, trying to educate people who are unaware. Some people themselves perhaps have deaf blindness and are not aware of the services available. So I go out and teach them and the public.
Thank you very much for that. And I was going to ask you, so when you're actually outreaching to the community regarding your services, where do you actually go? Are these the schools? Do you educate in the school system? Do you go to community organizations to provide information on your services?
All of the above. Go to schools, elementaries, high schools, colleges, universities, various organizations. Provide presentations all there. Do some conferences sometimes. Provide some workshops at camps as well.
Very good. And you actually, how do people contact you in your organization? Is it your website? Is it that they come to the center itself? They get an orientation?
Okay, so certainly folks can email me. They have, we can exchange emails back and forth. If they don't know me, then they'll probably end up looking on the website, the www.chkc.org. And from there, if they make contact there, then someone will refer them to me. Others, family, friends, schools, I get a lot of referrals and asks to come and support other individuals.
So you're very busy.
I am, but I enjoy it, right? I enjoy being busy. It's good. Having grown up with my parents. My parents didn't know that I was deafblind until that wasn't identified until the age of 16. As an infant, it was about a year. I was about a year or two old when they finally realized I was deaf. But at that time, the blindness was not a factor. So it wasn't until the age of 16 that they realized that I was actually deafblind. So the services that were available, they were unaware what to do, and I'm now married. I have 3 children. I have actually 4 jobs currently. So yes, I'm a very busy man. But you know, I can do just about anything. I always try to make sure people are aware of that.
So there is a big education piece that's involved, and I think perhaps in the past, when we were younger, perhaps that education and awareness wasn't there. So now you're spearheading a lot of the outreach and community involvement, which I think is really wonderful.
It is, thank you. Yeah, I quite enjoy doing it. I think that, you know, the deafblind population people need to be aware of us, that we're not hidden. We don't want deafblind individuals to be hidden. I think it's really important for them to be there, but it's difficult. People find it difficult to identify as deafblind, to make it known. I think people need to be proud of who they are. We are all a little bit different.
And speaking of awareness, I understand that June is Deafblind Awareness Month.
You are correct. We have something called June Fest. This is the sign for June Fest. Basically, the idea is that people always think of deaf and blind as having no sight, no vision, but we're trying to say, like, opening it up to folks, making them more aware of it. So yeah, we do a lot of advertising, continually, you know, trying to educate the world, all over the place, all over the world, to get people to be more aware of deafblind individuals.
That's fantastic. So I was wondering if you could explain the difference between an interpreter and an intervener.
Certainly. So interpreters, for many, many years, the deaf community has used interpreters. They use sign language, visual language, and they're converting between ASL and spoken English, or some other spoken language and some other sign language, right? It could be indigenous languages, could be French, etc. So we've had interpreters around doing that for a number of years. Interveners, sort of an additional thing. They, depending on the competency of those interveners, they do guiding. So they'll work with the deafblind individuals. Some of them are not so good at interpreting. We're trying to get interpreters a little more familiar with the deafblind community. So we have some that are more familiar than others. It's still a learning process for many interpreters because they usually work with the deaf, not deafblind. Specifically around sign language, we have a number of individuals who perhaps do use speech or can understand speech. I myself, I cannot. So I use sign language, and as my vision decreased, I've had to use tactile ASL, which is what you're seeing the interpreter and I use at this present time. So again, what we're doing when my hands are on top of her is called tactile ASL. There's a new form of communication as well that's called protactile, PT for short, and those are a little bit different. It's a different kind of communication. And I'm still trying to teach a lot of people how to use both tactile and protactile.
Well, thank you very much for that explanation. See, I'm learning a lot today too. And that's what it's all about, awareness and education.
It is. And just if I can add something for the audience, there's your senses, right? So obviously people have a number of different senses. I think it's important for an explanation of them. So the first sense is your sense of smell, right? Your second sense is your sense of hearing, correct? And there's obviously the sight is another sense. Touch, right? And sometimes people can get hurt with some of those touches, but sense is the sense of touch, and taste is our final sense, right? Something tastes good, tastes bad, for example, coffee being bitter perhaps, tea, different taste than coffee, right? So those are all the senses are related ultimately to your brain. For deafblind individuals, like myself, for example, I have what I would say 3.5 senses. The sense of hearing is gone. I can't hear anything, so that one's no longer there for me. The sense of sight, I guess I'd be equivalent to like a hard of hearing person. I would call it hard of sighted. That's what I would call myself. Right? So because my vision is decreasing. So the remaining senses there, as a deaf individual, can't hear anything, but there are individuals who are hard of hearing as well, who have some residual hearing, and then there's some that are deafened. So the deafened individuals as well are usually those individuals who are born with a sense of hearing and have lost their hearing over a period of time. Then there's a hard of hearing group which may or may not participate in the deaf community as well as in the hearing community. And then of course deaf individuals. What else did I want to say here? Sorry, I forgot to add one more thing. The sixth sense. The sixth sense to me is having a sense of humor. That's really important too.
That's very good. That's so true. Well, Elio and Monique, I'd like to thank you for joining us today at Socially Served at Abilities Expo. And it's a pleasure. And please let our viewers know of how to get in touch with your organization.
Certainly. Again, I said you can email me. My email is elio@chkc.org.
And the website.
Sure. And the website is www.chkc.org.
Thank you so much, Elio.
Yes, and if you want to reach out to me directly, just look for me through the website, or as I said, I'll give you the email. There's thank you.
Am I doing this right, Elio?
Yep, on your shoulder. Yep.
Terrific. Thank you again for joining us on Social
Just to
Serve.
clarify, yeah. So my protactile name, I think, is what you were doing.
Yes.
Yes. So a little smaller. So just like a tiny little circle on your shoulder. In ASL, my sign name is the fingerspelled letter E on the shoulder. It's more visual versus more tactile. So the protactile name is my sign name is based more on actual touch. Right? If you're curious to learn more about how to communicate protactile, you can get in touch with me, and I'll be happy to explain a little bit more. I have lots of resources and information available.
And that information is on the website, how to get in touch with interpreters or interveners, education workshops.
Yeah, there's a lot of information. You may not find that specifically, so you can also Google information about interpreters, and there's lots of information available there, particularly interpreters with deafblind or deaf, depending on how you want to communicate. So you can certainly use Google as an option as well to find out more information. And more information about protactile. Just type that in a Google search as well. Tactile ASL as well, if you're not. So, I'm not the only one who can provide this information to you.
Terrific. Thank you so much again, both of you. And thank you, viewers, for checking in with Socially Served, and we hope to see you again soon.